Oh, it's good to see you all. By many paths have we come to this house made sacred by the love of generations, made sacred by the joys and the sorrows that so many have brought to this place over the course of generations. How good it is to be here, to worship together for this hour, bringing our worries, our cares, bringing too our joys and our gifts of kindness and love to a world sorely in need of both. So may this hour offer peace to any hearts that are troubled, comfort to those who grieve, strength for those who are weary, inspiration to all in our troubled nation, our troubled world, as we learn better to share from the abundance of our hearts, to share through our presence, through our kind words, through our helping hands. So may it be this day and always. So may it be indeed. And we sing together our opening hymn. You've been hearing the wonderful variations on the tune of Dear Weaver of Our Lives Design. It's number 22 in our gray hymn books, number 22, Dear Weaver of Our Lives Designs. Come forward to lead us in our chalice lighting words.
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
Its brightness dispelling gloom, lighting a path to faith and hope.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling us to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace on all the world.
Good morning. I'm Lois Wood, Worship Associate for today. It is my honor and privilege and pleasure to be here in the pulpit with Reverend Ken Reed Brown. I have known him for many years. He actually was a minister that married Doug and I 34 years ago, and it's still working, so that's pretty good. My pronouns, by the way, are she, her, and hers. Whoever you are, wherever you have come today, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here today, and you are part of the congregation. After the service, we gather through that door right there in the assembly hall and have coffee and yummy treats made by the congregation. And if you take a red mug, because you're a visitor here, we will welcome you with open arms and probably hug you or something. Reverend Brown's bio. Reverend Ken Reed Brown is Minister Emeritus at Old Ship Church in Hingham, having retired in 2022 after 35 years there. He attended Haverford College as an undergrad. He received his master's in UU Seminary at Starr King School for ministry. He is now on the communications team for Elders Climate Action, a national group. He still lives with his wife Susan in Hingham. He has 3 grown and married children, 7 grandchildren, and 1 more on the way. Ed, could we have a note to sing the children out? Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you. Everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you. Everywhere you may go. The first reading today is chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching, as translated by Ursula Le Guin. The way you can go isn't the real way. The name you can say isn't the real name. Heaven and earth begin in the unnamed. Name's the mother of the 10,000 things. So the unwanting soul sees what's hidden, and the ever-wanting soul sees only what it wants. 2 things, one origin, but different in name, whose identity is mystery. Mystery of all mysteries, the door to the hidden.
Thank you, Lois. Lois was wondering before the service, just what does that all mean? And she still does. She says, I still do about a lot of it. Ursula Le Guin, as you know, is not known as a philosopher or translator of sacred texts, writer of science fiction and other things. Her father was a great fan of the Tao Te Ching and had copies, and she worked with Chinese speakers and a variety of translations to come up with her own translation/interpretation. The one thing that is pretty clear in this particular translation of the first chapter, the unwanting soul sees what's hidden. And if you're not always wanting things, then you can perhaps see more deeply. The ever-wanting soul sees only what it wants. I like that. That's not mostly what my sermon's going to be about, but that's worth taking home with you. May we allow the bell to lead us in a time of prayer and meditation. Spirit and source of life and love, mystery of mysteries. From the depths of this quiet time and the depths of our hearts, let us hold all beings in our prayers, the yearnings of our hearts. Our dearest ones, in whatever times they face of trial or illness or loss, our struggling neighbors, immigrants fearing for their safety, our trans siblings fearing for their safety, all those caught in the crossfire of violence and war wherever they may be, refugees, those without a home or without enough to eat. We hold all beings in our prayers, the yearnings of our hearts. Even as we pray for the courage and strength and wisdom to do what we are able to do, however modest, to help and heal, to contribute to the larger good, to contribute to the well-being of those around us and of all life. Now may we take our prayers, our meditations, our thoughts, our yearnings into a time of restful, renewing silence. Amen, and blessed be. From the yearnings of our hearts, we seek ways of all kinds to contribute to the larger good. One of those ways here, and as in all of our congregations each week, is to contribute whatever we are able to contribute to the well-being of this congregation and to the work that you all do that extends far beyond these walls. And so in that spirit, I invite our morning offering to be given. It will be received with gratitude. second reading this morning also comes from the Tao Te Ching, and I'll just comment that my dear friend of blessed memory, of your blessed memory as well, Robbie Walsh, was also an aficionado, if you will, of the Tao Te Ching. So I think of him for a number of reasons being here with you this morning. It's, again, really good to be with you today. I've preached here a few times now, and it's always a joy to be with Lois, who is often the worship associate, who I've known for all these years, and with all of you and in this beautiful, sacred place. Now, another word about the Tao Te Ching before I share the reading and then get to the sermon. That second word, usually transliterated T-E, Tao Te Ching, it's not a throwaway like the. Ching is the throwaway, it simply means book or classic. No, Tao Te Ching is the way and the power or virtue of the way. So while the way is mysterious, it's nameless, the virtue and the power, not so much. And that's part of what the whole book is about the virtue, the qualities of the way that cannot be named. Anyway, this second reading comes, it's a portion of chapter 27. Gives us a few more hints about this nameless way. There is something that contains everything. Not knowing its real name, we only call it the way. People follow earth. Earth follows heaven. Heaven follows the way, capital W. Heaven follows the way. The way follows what is. I think that's a particularly important line. The way follows what is. We'll talk more about that. Here ends the second reading. Well, there are many reasons that it's good to be here, and Swanborn's music is one of them. Thank you for your beautiful music this morning. Now, I feel fortunate, even privileged, to be content in my personal life, our personal lives, my wife and I. But I don't know about you these days, otherwise I'm sort of exhausted and distressed, sometimes depressed and dispirited by the state of things in our nation, in the world. On the one hand, I do feel I need to keep up with the news to be a good citizen. during these perilous times. On the other hand, a part of me would like just to ignore it, play the banjo a little more, read a good book, spend time with friends and family, especially those grandkids of ours that Lois mentioned. Well, we surely do need our times of rest and renewal. That's always been the case in our human lives. Relief from the press of events. We need to do all that we can do to remain healthy, physically, spiritually. Enjoy the sunrise. It's a beautiful one this morning. Enjoy the sunset. Spring flowers, they're coming. Go for a walk or a run. Root for the Red Sox. It might be a good year. Opening day coming up. Or meditate. Rest. Relax. But at the same time, we dare not pretend that everything going on in Washington and in our nation is not going on. Too much is at stake. How best then to live in these times or any times? And my sermon, in line with your March worship theme of trust, is trusting the nameless way, as you see in your program. And it just might, as I hope you'll see, integrate both of our impulses to withdraw on the one hand and to engage on the other. So to withdraw, ignore the cascade of news, but on the other hand, to engage, to pay attention. On the other hand, doing what we can to make a difference on the side of justice and love. With all this in mind, then, what do I mean by trusting the nameless way, the nameless Tao? I'll begin 53 years ago around a seminar table at Haverford College, where I was a philosophy major. Our professor, kind of a mentor for me, rumpled, kind of slouch like this, stood in front of our class on philosophy East and West, and led us in puzzling. It seemed to me for weeks, might have only been a class or two, puzzling over that first chapter, particularly the first mysterious line. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. And my recollection is, as I say, that it went on for a long time. It may not have been that long. But Paul was more comfortable with the Confucian classics, much more down-to-earth, worldly, beautiful, important in their own way. And though Confucius used the word Tao or way, it was in a less mysterious way. After all, the word itself, Tao, is not all that mysterious a word. It simply means, as we've heard, way. I gather that in China and other Chinese-speaking nations, you might see it on a road sign, like our avenue or road, such and such way, such and such Tao. It's also used to describe the proper way to do anything, carpentry, plumbing, doctoring, teaching, whatever it might be. It's not that it's necessarily easy to follow the way of any of those things, gardening as that season approaches. Not necessarily easy, but you can learn the skill. It's not mysterious. The ancient character for Tao is itself not particularly mysterious. The ideogram is simply a stylized head and feet. So it's the head leading the feet, the feet going down a path, and the head being led, that means, but also learning from the feet. Theory and practice, you might say. It's a simple idea. So what then does Lao Tzu, which simply means old master, nobody really knows who he was, why does he begin his brief book by telling us that there is a Tao that cannot be spoken, a way that's somehow beyond names? If you try to speak it, you've missed it. Well, as we know, just about every religious, spiritual, wisdom tradition on the planet affirms that the ultimate, the divine, by whatever name, is beyond names. So my stole here has all these symbols of world religions: Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and they all, one way or another, say, yeah, we use words, we talk about God or the Dharma, but it's really beyond any words that can describe it or try to. Even so, at the same time, every tradition affirms that there is an order to the universe, to the cosmos. Cosmos means ordered universe, basically. We're not living in a random universe. By whatever name we feebly try to call it, Tao, Dharma, God, simply the laws of nature, but really it's unnameable. Unnameable, and yet it's kind of how everything works. So one way of understanding our text this morning is that it's telling us that this impossible to name Tao or way, it is this impossible to name Tao or way that informs all the ordinary nameable ways. That doesn't mean that this unnameable way doesn't exist. I would suggest that it was in the spirit of all this that the 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant once wrote. See, I want to make sure that my philosophy education at Haverford was of some use, so I'll quote another philosopher. But he said in words some of you may be familiar with, he said, "Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe. The more often and steadily we reflect upon them, the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me." Now, it seems to me that Kant was affirming, though of course he didn't use the language of the Tao, but affirming that the way, the Tao of life, of universe, cosmos, was discernible, could be experienced if not adequately named. If we look with real attention at the natural world around us, and with equal attention at our inner world of what we often call conscience, the moral law within. Manifestations, we might say, of the eternal Tao, which itself cannot be named. Here's another perspective on the workings of the Tao that cannot be adequately named, and it comes from another academic moment. This from my time at our Unitarian Universalist Seminary out in Berkeley, Starr King School for the Ministry. I took a class, so it's part of a consortium of schools, of a Catholic, Protestant, there was a Jewish center, a Buddhist center, and the particular class that I'm going to refer to was in the non-denominational school, but a Protestant Pacific School of Religion. The course was taught by Professor Otwell, an imposing, scholarly, and deeply religious figure, for an assignment on the prophets, Isaiah, Micah, Amos, and the rest. I wrote an essay asserting that we could think of the prophets as Taoist sages. By this I meant that their proclamations of doom for the nation of Israel if they didn't change their ways, they continued as they were acting, or good times if they did change their ways, were essentially, these proclamations were essentially based on the idea that there was and is this underlying way, Tao, of the universe, morally speaking. So that if you, individually or collectively, aligned yourselves with this way, this Tao, things will go well. But if you didn't, for example, laying up riches for yourselves, while the poor go hungry, the poor suffer, things will not go well. Quite the contrary. In short, the prophets were not in the business of predicting the future. They were naming what they saw going on and naming what the consequences would be, one way or another. Right? The consequences of injustice is what they mostly talked about. The consequences, as I said in my essay for that class, of not aligning with the Tao. Well, what did Professor Otwell think of all this? As I recall, I got a B on my essay. Might have been a B+. He said my reasoning, it was well researched, my reasoning was good, but he disputed the endpoint. He disputed my theology, my conclusions about the underlying theology of the prophets. Well, okay, I was willing to sacrifice possible A on the altar of what I believed to be the case. Maybe he wanted to give me a C, but and it's what I still believe. For whatever language we use, the language of the Tao Te Ching or of the prophets, The underlying message is, as far as I can tell, the same. I'll kind of say it again. Align with the material and moral order, and things will go well. Fail to align with the material and moral order or conscience, and things will not go well. We are, of course, seeing all this today, aren't we? The current president and the administration are, in my view anyway, I won't speak for all of you, but I'm hardly alone. They're pursuing policies that will, sooner or later, lead to ruin for themselves, for many others already, for our democracy, not to mention for the environment and the climate. You really can't fool the Tao of Mother Nature. Further, things could well end up being worse if those of us who disagree with these policies, who see the misalignment with the Tao, if you will, just sit back and let nature or the Tao take its course. Rather than, it is of course for us to do our best to align ourselves and our responses to what's going on with the Tao, the material and moral order as best we can discern it, and to act accordingly in whatever modest ways we may find we are able to do. But how do we do that when the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao, the name, it's the nameless way? Well, we can align with what what Kant was talking about, the manifestations of the Tao, manifestations of the moral order. How about, for example, striving to align our lives and our actions with that Greek trinity of goodness, beauty, and truth? Are we not, after all, able to measure our actions and the actions of others against those timeless virtues, if you will, qualities, goodness, beauty, truth? Is this good? Is it beautiful? Is it true? Or how about kindness as another measure? How about compassion, which at one point in the Tao Te Ching is named as one of the great treasures of a sage's life? How about love? All manifestations of the nameless. In other words, maybe it's not so hard, after all, to discern when we, or our nation for that matter, are not aligned or are aligned with the way, with what is, as the second reading put it, and how it works, and when we are not. Now, at this point, some of you may be remembering that at the outset I suggested that trusting the nameless way might help us to integrate our impulse on the one hand to withdraw, to just tend our own garden, so to speak, to take care of ourselves, ignore the news and so on, and on the other to engage, doing what we can to make a difference in the wider world on the side of justice and love, whether protesting, writing emails, signing petitions, and so on. Well, I don't think this is particularly complicated. It's not necessarily easy in the midst of the turmoil of our times, maybe of our lives. And each of us will have our own way. Might include some time of exercise, maybe out in nature if we're able to do that. Walk in the woods, on the beach. I hear you've got some nice beaches around here. Or just in your neighborhood, enjoying the blossoming of spring. It could include taking time to appreciate the beauty, as I said earlier, of sunrise and sunset. Maybe reading poetry, a little bit each day, or now and then anyway, or one of these ancient texts, the Tao Te Ching, or the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, whatever it might be, passages of the Bible, all of which can remind us of who we are, whether out in nature, surveying the night sky, or reading one of these texts, of who we are, not utterly separate individuals, but woven into the fabric of life, part of the whole of life, which can in turn inspire us to do what we can for the whole, for the flourishing of all life. To put it slightly differently, in these and other ways, might be meditation, yoga, or sometimes just staring out the window. You've got pretty nice windows to stare out of here. Maybe at home too, just pausing. We can seek to ground ourselves in the fabric of life, aligning as best we can with the way that cannot be named, the centering power to which we can be attentive by being attentive to nature, to ourselves and to each other. You know, that being attentive to another, maybe just in coffee hour or as you're leaving here, to be attentive to another takes you out of yourself. You know, we think of ourselves as these isolated individuals, but to be attentive to another, and you're part of one another's lives. And at the very least, highfalutin philosophy aside, all these sorts of things, along with maybe most important of all, staying connected with those we love, can simply help us maintain a little ordinary sanity, not to be underrated. Further, all of this can help when it comes to reading the paper or listening to the news, just enough to be informed, not overwhelmed. And then to get on with our day, including to be as good a citizen as we can be, clicking on a petition, writing a letter to the editor or an elected official, showing up at a protest, whatever presents itself as a way to be a decent citizen, a decent human being. Just a word of kindness to our neighbor, that ripples. It really does. You've experienced it in both directions. I'm sure all of us have. Kind words ripple. Well, finally then, for this morning, these words from the meditation teacher Eknath Easwaran. I don't know how many of you are familiar with him, but he died a quarter centuries ago, translated some of the sacred texts, the Gita, the Upanishads, the Dhammapada of Buddhism. He wrote about Gandhi. Anyway, he wrote these words I'm going to share in the 1970s, a long time ago, and it was at the very end of his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient Hindu text. These words, for me anyway, remain as relevant as ever, as I think you'll hear, and they, I believe, kind of sum up much of what I've been trying to say today, though in slightly different language. He wrote, remember, 1970s, in these dark times, I would like every one of you to remember this: we are not alone. We are surrounded by creative powers, as surrounded as we are by air and light and gravitation. It is only when we fail to ally ourselves with the forces of light that they are able to support us. If we give our wholehearted support, love will triumph, he wrote. This remembrance, he said, brings faith, it brings hope, it brings the certitude of victory. Certitude of victory? How? When? One more brief word, Václav Havel's message. And quote, hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something is worth doing, no matter how it turns out. Amen, and blessed be. We are going to sing again. One of my favorite hymns, just a reminder of our privileged and beautiful place on this beautiful earth. For the earth forever turning, number 163, again in your gray hymn books. May we rise as we are able, rise in body or spirit, to sing. Please be seated as our ushers come forward to lead us in the extinguishing of the chalice words.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of
Truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Aware of whatever measure of blessings we are privileged to have in our lives, may we turn and make of our lives a blessing to each person we meet, a blessing to life, a blessing, a blessing. So may it be, blessed be, and amen.